Hey guys, it's Allie. Welcome back to Bite-Sized Book of Mormon. I'm glad to have you with me. So, if you've never been here before, this is just a podcast where I read through one chapter of the Book of Mormon each episode, and to give a little bit of context, a little bit of insight, a little bit of good times, so stick around. So, if you remember last chapter, we kind of read the first half of a story. So now, for this chapter and last chapter, we're in the records of the people of Alma. So what happened after they ran away from King Noah? This is what happened. So in last chapter, we found out that the wicked priests of King Noah allied themselves with the Lamanites and took over the city of Helam and the land of Helam, which is where Alma and his people settled. And then the chapter ended there. So let's kind of see how God gets them out of this bind, where they're kind of under the thumb of an old wicked priest of King Noah. So yeah, I think without further ado, let's read Mosiah chapter 24. And it came to pass that Amulon did gain favor in the eyes of the king of the Lamanites. Therefore the king of the Lamanites granted unto him and his brethren that they should be appointed teachers over his people, yea, even over the people who were in the land of Shemlon, and in the land of Shilem, and in the land of Amulon. For the Lamanites had taken possession of all these lands, therefore the king of the Lamanites had appointed kings over all these lands. And now the name of the king of the Lamanites was Laman, being called after the name of his father, and therefore he was called King Laman, and he was king over a numerous people. And he appointed teachers of the brethren of Amulon in every land which was possessed by his people, and thus the language of Nephi began to be taught among all the people of the Lamanites. And they were a people friendly one with another, nevertheless they knew not God, neither did the brethren of Amulon teach them anything concerning the Lord their God, neither the law of Moses, nor did they teach them the words of Abinadi. But they taught them that they should keep their record, and that they might write one to another. So this is a really interesting situation. We're kind of getting the point of view of the wicked priests of King Noah. Like, not directly from their point of view, but we're kind of seeing what's happening to them. So, the wicked priests of King Noah, Amulon included, were appointed teachers over all of the holdings of the Lamanites. So, like, at least one of the old wicked priests was appointed to be a teacher in the different regions that the Lamanites have control over. And so it sounds like the language of the Nephites was being taught, and also that record keeping was being taught, so they could write one to another and keep their records like the Nephites do, which is really interesting. And so this is another one of those moments where I'm like, how bad are the Lamanites really? Like, obviously they're doing bad things, they're taking over this land, obviously they're very imperialistic, right? They always want to get more land in their kingdom. But it doesn't seem like they're actively doing bad things at this moment. Now, that is not to say that it will change by the end of the chapter, but at this moment, it seems like they're using these Nephites that are allying themselves with them to learn of the ways of the Nephites that the Lamanites find useful, like writing and keeping records, which is really interesting. And what really struck me, especially in this section, was in verse 5, the beginning of verse 5, it says, "And they were a people friendly one with another, nevertheless they knew not God." And, in fact, the wicked priests of King Noah, which used to be priests for the Nephites, did not teach them anything about God, not about the law of Moses, not about the words of Abinadi, nothing, which is strange. So it seems like these ex-priests don't even want to be priests anymore. Like, they're teachers of the people like priests are in Nephite society, but they're teaching nothing about God. It's like a purely secular kind of teacher, which is really strange. So anyways, this is kind of an interesting situation. Obviously, they're still being wicked and they're still being godless. In my opinion, I think that the worst kind of offenders against God in this situation are the ex-wicked priests of King Noah, because they know the law of Moses. They know what the scriptures say. And I'm sure that many of them were, against their will, struck by what Abinadi said. And yet, they are not teaching it at all to the Lamanites. They have this truth. Who knows how much they believe it, but they have the truth, and they aren't teaching it. So I think that they have the most knowledge, and they are doing the least with it. The Lamanites don't have any knowledge about the gospel. They just know that the people that they hate, they have this weird belief system, whatever, we don't care, we just want to kill them. But the wicked priests of King Noah, they know the belief system, they understand it, they clearly have read the scriptures because they quote Isaiah at Abinadi, and yet they do nothing with it. I guess you could argue they're hiding from God. Like, they've kind of left their religion behind them, and now they're living a different life among the Lamanites. So it's kind of interesting to see what the wicked priests of Noah represent. Like, they're no longer the priests, obviously, but this group of people that used to be these priests are still kind of wicked in the same way, but in a different context. And so it's kind of really interesting to see what they do. And thus the Lamanites began to increase in riches, and began to trade one with another, and wax great, and began to be a cunning and a wise people as to the wisdom of the world, yea, a very cunning people, delighting in all manner of wickedness and plunder, except it were among their own brethren. And now it came to pass that Amulon began to exercise authority over Alma and his brethren, and began to persecute him, and cause that his children should persecute their children. For Amulon knew Alma, that he had been one of the king's priests, and it was he that believed the words of Abinadi and was driven out before the king, and therefore he was wroth with him, for he was subject to King Laman. Yet he exercised authority over them, and put tasks upon them, and put taskmasters over them. And it came to pass that so great were their afflictions that they began to cry mightily to God. So this sounds like it's a more personal thing than it usually is, because Amulon directly and personally knew Alma, and now they're on the two opposing sides of a conflict. And so clearly Amulon has a bone to pick. Amulon thinks that Alma is doing the wrong thing, and obviously Alma thinks the opposite. Alma thinks that what he's doing is right and what Amulon is doing is wrong. And so this is a very personal conflict, and Amulon seems to be taking out his personal beef with Alma on his entire people, which is crazy. And it also sounds like he's having his people, not just himself, but his people have conflict with their people. So it's not just Amulon and Alma, it's the people of Amulon versus the people of Alma. So this personal conflict has now been escalated to something way bigger than it has to be, just because Amulon is salty that Alma did something different than he did. So, yeah, it's kind of strange to hear how personal this is, because we don't usually get that. Usually it's just like, well, your forefathers didn't like my forefathers, so therefore I don't like you. But it's like, no, these two were, I guess you could call them co-workers for like a long time. They were together on the council of wicked priests that King Noah had, and now they've gone completely different directions. Oh man, I'm sure someone could write a book about this. This like drama between these two people and how they're now on opposing sides of the same conflict. It's crazy. And Amulon commanded them that they should stop their cries, and he put guards over them to watch them, that whosoever should be found calling upon God should be put to death. And Alma and his people did not raise their voices to the Lord their God, but did pour out their hearts to him, and he did know the thoughts of their hearts. And it came to pass that the voice of the Lord came unto them in their afflictions, saying, Lift up your heads, and be of good comfort, for I know of the covenant which ye have made unto me, and I will covenant with my people, and deliver them out of bondage. And I will also ease the burdens which are put upon your shoulders, that even you cannot feel them upon your backs, even while you are in bondage. And this will I do, that ye may stand as witnesses for me hereafter, and that ye may know of a surety that I, the Lord God, do visit my people in their afflictions. Imagine being in this situation. You're a fresh believer of God. You haven't been believing for that long, maybe a few months, maybe a few years, probably not even. And you are suddenly put under so much trials and so much tribulations. You are forced to run out into the wilderness, you start your own settlement, you're doing great for a while, and then you all get put under the thumb of Amulon, which seems to have a personal beef with your leader, and so you're all kind of subjugated and burdened and driven as slaves are, and you're kind of suffering, and you're like, what is this? You know, I thought the gospel was joyful. I thought God was going to protect us from all these things. And then you can't even pray. You can't pray to the very God that you just discovered. And so what do? You pray in your hearts, because God knows what is in there, and he cares about what is in your heart, and not so much whether or not you say it with your mouth. And so they get the most reassuring thing from God that is physically possible. God basically says to them in verse 13 and 14, Be of good comfort. I know that you have covenanted with me, and I will honor that covenant. But because I'll be honoring my side of the covenant, that means you are going to be witnesses of me hereafter. I'm going to lighten the burdens upon your backs. I will make things easier for you, but you have to be witnesses of me hereafter. This is the coolest thing ever. Not only is God like, don't worry guys, you're gonna be fine. I'm proud of you for praying in your hearts, this is great. Fear not, your problems aren't gonna go away, but they are going to become lightened so that you don't even feel them anymore. And because I do that for you, I want you to be witnesses of me. And so I think that that is a wonderful example of the mercy and love of God, but also the fact that religion asks something of us. How religion is not just taking things from God for praying to him. Religion is a give and a take. We get blessings from God, and we are an example to the believers. We stand as ensigns, we stand as standards to other people to witness of his truth. Religion isn't just a thing where you sit there, you pray, you get blessings, you're good. Religion is a thing where you live your life in the way that God wants you to. You follow his commandments. You are a witness of him. And sometimes that's really hard. And then you also happen to get blessings from him. So I really love kind of the two-way nature of this response from God. It's very cool. And now it came to pass that the burdens which were laid upon Alma and his brethren were made light. Yea, the Lord did strengthen them, that they could bear up their burdens with ease. And they did submit cheerfully and with patience to all the will of the Lord. And it came to pass that so great was their faith and their patience, that the voice of the Lord came unto them again, saying, Be of good comfort, for on the morrow I will deliver you out of bondage. And he said unto Alma, Thou shalt go before this people, and I will go with thee, and deliver this people out of bondage. Oh my goodness, this is so exciting. The people's faith was so great, their patience, their trust, their faith was so great that God said to them again after a little bit of time, I'm going to free you tomorrow. And then he says to Alma, hey, you're going to go before them, you're going to lead them, and I'm going to help you guys get free. That would be the most exciting spiritual impression to get. Period. Straight up. Nothing would be better. You're saying that I've been under the thumb of this Amulon guy for forever, and even though I can carry all the burdens that he puts on me, it's still not the best. And you're saying that we're going to be free tomorrow? That is amazing. God almost never puts timelines or dates on his revelations, but this one he did, which is so exciting. He's like, tomorrow you'll be free. If I were a Nephite that got that revelation, I would have been bouncing off the walls so excited. Oh my goodness, that is so cool. Now it came to pass that Alma and his people in the nighttime gathered their flocks together, and also of their grain, yea, even all the nighttime were they gathering their flocks together. And in the morning the Lord caused a deep sleep to come upon the Lamanites, yea, and all their taskmasters were in a profound sleep. And Alma and his people departed into the wilderness, and when they had traveled all day, they pitched their tents in a valley, and they called the valley Alma, because he led their way in the wilderness. Yea, and in the valley of Alma they poured out their thanks to God, because he had been merciful unto them, and eased their burdens, and had delivered them out of bondage. For they were in bondage, and none could deliver them, except it were the Lord their God. So, the people are free. But you know what about this story really stuck out to me? The amount of trust that it took from Alma to follow God's commandments. Because basically God said, hey, you're going to take this people, you're going to leave the city, and I'm going to make sure you get out fine. And he has no idea what God's going to do. He has no idea what's going to happen when they leave city. Like, are they going to be chased? Are they going to be found out before they can even leave? What's going to happen? But he just takes his people and he leaves. He doesn't know how he's going to be protected. He just knows that he is going to be protected. That huge amount of faith takes me all the way back to 1 Nephi, when Nephi just goes into the land of Jerusalem and just walks around and follows the Spirit and eventually finds Laban conked out from wine on the middle of a road, and then his prayer is answered. He goes into Jerusalem having no clue what's going to happen. He just has the knowledge that if he follows the Spirit, things are going to be good. And Alma had the same thing. He's been told by God, hey, you're going to leave the city tomorrow and things are going to be fine. But if you're Alma, you have no idea how it's going to be fine. I, at least, would be a little bit apprehensive to see what's going to happen. Like, are we going to be chased, but they're just not going to catch us? Like, what is going to happen to protect us? I'm taking potentially hundreds or thousands of people out of the city all at once, and you're saying that it's going to go off without a hitch? That's scary. That's a lot of trust to put into God's hands, and yet Alma does it seemingly without blinking. And God follows through on his promise. God makes a deep sleep come upon all of the Lamanites so that they can get out without a hitch. That is a miracle. And then, once they're out of the city and they're in a valley that they name Alma, they immediately start giving thanks. Like, once they're out of the arm's length of the Lamanites, they can't be caught anymore, the first thing they do is they give thanks. And that, I think, is how you know that their priorities are straight. They know that it wasn't just what they did that got them out of the city. It was the intervention of God that got them out of that city. And they know who they need to thank. And they do. And that's great. And they gave thanks to God, yea, all their men and all their women and all their children that could speak lifted their voices in the praises of their God. And now the Lord said unto Alma, Haste thee, and get thou and this people out of this land, for the Lamanites have awakened, and do pursue thee. Therefore get thee out of this land, and I will stop the Lamanites in this valley, that they come no further in pursuit of this people. And it came to pass that they departed out of the valley, and took their journey into the wilderness. And after they had been in the wilderness 12 days, they arrived in the land of Zarahemla, and King Mosiah did also receive them with joy. So in the last 3-4 chapters, we've had two separate groups of people return to the land of Zarahemla, and King Mosiah welcomes them with joy. That is not only the people of Limhi, but also the people of Alma. So now all the believers are back kind of in their home country a little bit, which is so exciting. But also it's cool how, even though they got to the valley, they feel like they're safe, they're praising God. God is like, actually, maybe don't get super comfortable quite yet, because the Lamanites are chasing you. But since you were so righteous, since you thanked me so well, since you knew where your priorities were, I'm going to warn you one more time. So you need to leave this valley now, and I will stop the Lamanites in their tracks here. But as long as you leave, and you listen to my words, then you'll be fine. So it's not like God got them out of the city in one fell swoop. Like, they got to the valley, they were great for a little bit, and then God is actually like, actually, keep going, because they're chasing you. Which is kind of interesting to hear, because, God didn't just give them one revelation and called it good. He gave them 3 revelations. In the beginning, he was like, don't worry, I'm going to lighten your burdens. And then he's like, you're going to leave the city tomorrow. And then thirdly, he was like, actually, can you keep going because the Lamanites are going to catch up to you. He gave them 3 separate revelations along their journey to get them out. He really cared. He held their hand through the process of getting free from the Lamanites. And that, I think, is a miracle. And I think it really shows how much faith and trust they had for God, how fast they got out from under the hands of the Lamanites. It took the people of Limhi so much longer because they kept doing the wrong thing. They kept attacking the Lamanites. They kept not trusting God. They kept not praying to God. But the people of Alma got out so quickly because right from the get-go, they were praying, they were trusting God, they were being righteous together, and then they only continued to be righteous as they were freed. And so it's kind of fun to compare how long it took the people of Limhi to get free versus how long it took the people of Alma to get free. Because the people of Alma were so much more readily righteous, which is so cool. And that is definitely something that we should be striving for. We should strive to be readily righteous. Even in the face of difficulty, of burdens, of trials, we should be readily righteous. So the standout verse that I want to read for today is verse 12, which says, "And Alma and his people did not raise their voices to the Lord their God, but did pour out their hearts to him, and he did know the thoughts of their hearts." So this kind of has 2 thoughts for me. The first one is that it's really cool that once Amulon decreed that the people couldn't pray anymore, and they got guarded over to make sure they didn't pray, they didn't just give up there. They weren't just like, oh man, we can't pray, well, we can't talk to God, we're screwed. They immediately started praying in their hearts. They immediately started just thinking about God and praying to him quietly and more personally, I think, which is pretty cool. And the second thing that I think is interesting about this is that the principle that God cares about what we think about and not just what we do or say. Because sometimes I'm really bad at showing God that I love him. Sometimes I don't read my scriptures, or I don't do anything spiritual in a day at all. And I feel like I just am really bad at showing God that I love him. And I do love him. I love God, obviously, enough to run this podcast, etc. But sometimes I just don't do the things that show him that that is true. And so it's kind of relieving sometimes to think about this concept of the fact that I still think about God. I still love him, even though I don't do the things that show that very well. And obviously both are important, but it is not just actions that show God that we love him. It is also the thoughts of our heart. And that is just as important, which is, like I said, reassuring, especially for someone like me who's really bad at building habits like that sometimes. So yeah, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed. I really had a fun time reading this chapter, especially because it was kind of the resolution to the conflict that was set up in last chapter, which was a lot of fun. So yeah, there's just a few links down in the show notes that I want to go over. The first one is a let me know what you learned link. So if you want to shoot me a message or give me a little bit of feedback or commentary about the podcast, go ahead, send me a message there. There's also 3 different links to access the digital version of the Book of Mormon. There's a web version, and then there's 2 different app downloads. So if you want to click those to get your own copy, feel free. They're all obviously free. Who would charge for the Book of Mormon? Really. And so, yeah, I hope you click those, and I hope you read along. It's a great time. So there's also a support the show link down there. So if you want to shoot me a few dollars and support what I do in building this podcast, you can do that. And finally, we are on YouTube. So if you want to go and click on that bottom link to find the YouTube channel, you can subscribe to the channel. You can listen to the podcast there. It gets posted twice a week. And so, yeah, that's available for you. So yeah, I think that's all I have for you today. I'll talk to you later. Bye.